Okay, so we are Chazzarah, U'LeMaaseh, SEMICHA base, Seifim Hay through Tess till the end. So there's a lot of ground to cover. Welcome back now. And try to get as much as we can. Again, as our what's the word? Our system, our custom here is read inside, translate, and try to give as many extra details that are Negei U'LeMaaseh that are relevant, practically speaking. So let's begin. As you remember from our share on what was it, Tuesday, that the question is, do we apply Hanan to Balua? Balua means flavor that's absorbed within a vessel. So you have meat flavor absorbed within a vessel, and now milk falls onto that vessel while it's hot. Does all the flavor now become Hanan? Which would mean we have to 60 against all of the flavor that's in the pot. Or I don't say Hanan, and I only need 60 against the drop of milk.
This one is like fresh hot versus the benyam.
As the Rama will point out, that we'll see it has to be Ben Yaman. Okay, so let's see. Tipas chalav, a drop of milk, shenafla al kadera, which fell onto the side of a pot, she'etz ala eish, that is near, or it's on the fire. So it's on the fire. It's a hot pot of meat. And now a drop of milk falls on the side of this pot, on the outside. So, im nafla keneged hatapshil, if it falls on the area outside the pot that is parallel to where the stew is on the inside. Yes? So it falls on the outside of the pot parallel to that area which has stew. Then, ein tzarech ela shishim keneged hatipa, you only need 60 against the drop of milk, because as we learned, even if you're going to apply the standard of Hanan to Balua, because it fell in the surface area that is where the stew is, parallel to the stew. So even the flavored stew, this is at least one way of understanding it, even the flavor that is in the pot itself is part and parcel of the same unit of meat that is in the stew itself, or in a mixture in the stew, not with the meat. And therefore, so long as you have 60 against the drop of milk, you're good. As he explains. Hatipa, you only need 60 against the drop of milk. Because the drop of milk absorbs inward toward the flavor, toward the stew. It's as if it fell into the actual stew. And then you need 60 against the drop of milk. In other words, the flavor absorbed in the pot never had time to become Hanan. That's another way of understanding it.
This is dropped outside. So like dropped outside, but in the same part.
It fell on the outside, but there's stew up till here, and it fell down here. So one way of understanding is, I actually just alluded to two different ways of understanding it. One way is the flavor inside the pot is considered as one unit with the flavor inside the pot, and therefore all of it together can combine to nullify the drop of milk. Or because it's near the stew draws the milk into it, and thus it's nullified. The language of the Shulchan Aruch seems like the latter, right? The drop is like travels, expands inward toward the stew, and therefore as if it fell from the stew itself. So long as you're 60 against the drop of milk, it is good. Now, if it falls on the outside of the pot, but in the pot that's parallel to where it's empty on the inside. So the stew is only halfway up, and this fell on the outside of the pot above halfway. So now, where did that drop travel? Now the drop of milk is traveling within the walls of the actual pot. And now, it's mixing with that flavor that's in there, all of which is becoming Hanan. When it travels till where the stew is, so it goes into the pot, travels below to where the stew is. We learned that even if it travels below, that's irrelevant, because it still remains Hanan above, as we spoke about this in our intro. So Kolkach, so much so, She'ein Shishim Keneged Atipa, it travels within the pot so much, but there isn't 60 flavor in the pot. There isn't 60 units of flavor in the pot against the one drop of milk. that there isn't that much absorbed into the pot. And this, therefore, so that part of the pot, or at least the flavor that's inside that part of the pot, becomes prohibited. Chanan. And therefore, if you're going to pour out the pot, the flavor, passing over that part of the pot, which has become chanan, which I don't really know where it is, but I know that somewhere there's chanan up there. Shenesar, which was forbidden because of chanan. How did yesar tashel, the entirety of the pot, of the entirety of the stew, become not kosher? So what do I do now? I want to get the stew that's below the chanan out of my pot without it interacting with the chanan, which is in the pot above the stew. Yeah, we clear on this? So here's the solution. Leave it alone as is. Don't touch it until it cools down, and then you can pour it out. Okay, so some details, some of which actually came up during our discussion on Tuesday, and we'll get to the answers now. But so far, this was clear.
So just to try to mean until it's below Yad Solas, so it can still be hot. It just can't be Yad Solas. So we're just like
that's a good question because lav dafka. Because I'm surprised I actually didn't discuss about that. But I think actually it's even more than less than Yad Solas, because when it comes to, for example, Hilchah Shabbos, Kli Rishon remains a Kli Rishon, even if it's low Yad Solas, so long as it's still it's hot, still it's warm.
yeah.
So lav dafka, maybe it has to be less. But I'm surprised actually here that he doesn't mention that here. I'm surprised.
It's still on the fire, then
yeah. Even if it's off the fire, if it didn't leave the Kli Rishon, it retains Kli Rishon while it's even below the Yad Solas, but certainly for Shabbos. You're a good point. I don't know why. I would have thought that this book would have covered that, but I don't see that he does. Okay, so let's see. So point number one: even if you wipe the milk right away, nonetheless, you still need to have. Now, well, first of all, we had the machlekes. We already discovered the machlekes because the Shulchan Aruch only mentions what the halach of the stew is. He doesn't mention whether the pot needs kosherizing. And we mentioned on Sunday, depending on the two different ways I explained, how the milk passes through here. Let's say it's up. Okay, I should have a clear cup. But the stew, the pen, pass me the pen. So our stew only goes till here. Can we see the line?
Yeah, now we can.
Yeah. So the stew only goes to there. If the stew is filled up to there, so if the milk falls through here, do I say that the entirety of everything is part of the unit that is counted for 60 against this drop of milk, and then the pot does not require kosherizing, right? Or do I say some of it still gets stuck in the pot, and even though the stew is okay because whatever traveled in the stew is nullified, but there's still some chanan and there's still some absorption in the pot, and the pot does require kosherizing. So we had that machlokes already. We spoke about that on Sunday, that dispute. But it's important to note that whichever way whatever your view is, you still need to wipe it right away. Even if it's wiped right away, the halacha still applies because it could have absorbed at least for half a second, and then you still have to kosherize the pot. Yep. Even if you have 60 in there and the stew is kosher, the pot must be kosher.
That's only if it falls on the outside.
Outside for sure.
On the inside and the pot of shishim, if we're gonna use that, that's good.
If it fell into the stew itself, for sure, it never had time to absorb into the wall.
But if it dripped down the inner wall of the pot.
Okay, we'll discuss that soon because you have the issue of steam, which might mix it all together. Good question. Let's get to that.
If it's hot enough when they make itself steam, if you like sprinkle water onto the outside of the pot, it still boil.
Right, which is why he's saying that even if you wiped it right away, there's still some absorption. You have to kosherize the pot, even though the stew might be kosher because there's 60 against it. Again, if it fell opposite to where this stew is, below the line. Yeah. Now, isn't that funny? Yeah. So now, if there's a great monetary loss, you can rely on the opinion that says you don't have to kosherize the pot.
You say kosher liver?
Sorry?
You say kosher liver?
No, agala. Okay, now here's an interesting thing. If the second half of the halacha, which is like this, we spoke about this on Sunday. I didn't have the answer, or maybe I got it wrong. I don't know, but I have the answer now. If the milk falls above the line, so it's not opposite where the stew is, it's here. So we say that all this is potentially chanan, right? Which is what, right? All this is potentially chanan because the milk is traveling through all the milk. The milk is traveling through all the meat flavor that's here. So all this is chanan. I don't know how much. Is it all here? Is it here? Is it just here? We don't know where the chanan is. There's definitely chanan somewhere there. And therefore, even if I have 60 against the drop of milk, it's not enough. And if I have to wait till it cools down before I take it out. Yeah, that was the halacha in the Shulchan Aruch. Now, we're going to learn later, right, that if the pot's covered and it fell on the top, the Ramah says, because the steam travels up and down, so it's considered as if it fell opposite to where the stew is in the stew, and you only need 60 in the stew to nullify that drop of milk. That's what we're going to learn in the Ramah soon.
If you have a drop of milk that falls on the lid,
The lid,
and
the
the
cup.
lid's not. I mean,
And the lid is on, but the soup is so hot that the stew is so hot that it's boiling, such that if I were to open it, it would cause a huge steam, and it's like because it's raining inside the pot basically. So therefore, when it drops on top there, on top of the stew, that Ramah is going to tell us soon, it's considered as if it fell here, and if you only need 60 against the drop.
what if you wipe it off before you pick up the lid, and you're not going to have that transfer it?
They're wiping off is not the question because the second it touches, it's already some absorption, right? But here the point is now says, someone asked me what happens if the lid is covered and it fell here. Someone asked it on Sunday,
And it's also,
so I think I suggested then that maybe it's only on top because the steam goes directly up, not on the side. That's what I suggested. I was wrong.
What did you say?
I suggested on Sunday because the Ramah only said lid. I suggested that maybe because the steam goes up, straight, and down, it's this leniency is only if it falls on the lid, not on the side.
Okay.
But I was wrong about that.
Oh, interesting.
Because even though there is an opinion which is stringent, there is an opinion which is lenient. Nonetheless, there are many that say that the pot is covered, no matter because of the steam traveling up and down. The whole thing is considered all as if it's fell a drop here. So the difference in the Shulchan Aruch between above the line is only if it's open. If it's covered, it's all considered one, and you only need 60 against the pot. It's a major leniency, important to know. Moreover, there's even an opinion which says that if a drop of milk falls there and you quickly cover the top,
that's true.
then you only need 60 against the drop of milk, and there's no chanan ever. Similar to if the milk fell on the piece of meat that was above the stew and it mixed it together quickly, it's all good. You only need 60 against the milk because you didn't have time for chanan. So that's this view which says if you cover it right away, you prevent chanan from ever taking place because you now mix the whole stew together, including that area. There's even such an opinion.
If the pot did, then it'd be impossible to take the stew.
Exactly, unless you had 60 times 60, right? Which you say, unless you have 60 times 60.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Okay.
No, the whole pot doesn't become chanan. It's just a spot.
Well, meaning the pot itself. Well, potentially the whole pot's chanan because we don't know where it travels, right?
That was the whole issue.
We don't know where it is. Yes, right.
Depends
That's right.
on the stringency you're saying.
Unless you have 60 times 66. 60 times 60, right? Okay, one more thing I want to share here. Now, l'chatchila, you shouldn't pour out. This is what I want to discuss, right? So your milk drop fell here above the line, and you're supposed to wait till it cools down before you pour it out. It's open. Now you shouldn't really pour it out the other side, even the other side. It fell here. You shouldn't even pour it out that side because again, we don't know where the chanan travels to. All right. Yeah. So you shouldn't even pour it out the other side. You have to wait till it cools down. However, if you're in a tight situation, it's your Shabbos meal, and you have guests coming, you got to serve them hot soup, and the drop of milk fell here, then you're allowed to pour it out the other side. Moreover, even if you accidentally poured it out, even on the side, even if you accidentally poured it out this side where the milk dropped, you can still, at least in a tight situation, allow as long as there's 60 against the drop. Because remember, we learned on Sunday there is opinions which are much more lenient than Shulchan Aruch anyway, right? Which say that we treat the whole thing only needed 60 against the drop.
It says in the shach here that even if you had a hole on the bottom of the pot and didn't pass over the thing, it's a problem.
Yeah, the shach is very strict because you don't know which. The shach is the one that is the opinion which says we don't know where the thing travels around.
Okay.
So it could be travels everywhere. Okay. And one more thing I want to say. Now we learn. Okay, we'll learn in a second. Now let's look at the Rama. It's running out of time. Okay. Specifically, if the pot has already been used before, so it has meat absorption, and then there's a question of the meat absorption becoming chanan. Likewise, it was used within that last 24 hours. Because if the last time this was used for meat, it was more than 24 hours ago, even if it's chanan, it's less than town of gam, it's a negative flavor. Right?
Yeah.
Yes, you know that principle? You know the principle of nice and town of gam? That if flavor is absorbed more than 24 hours prior, then that flavor is a negative flavor. So this pot in which the drop falls on the top of the line, on top of the stew, and there's a problem of chanan in that flavor, it's A, only if there is flavor there, which means this pot was once upon a time used before. B, it was used in that last 24 hours. If it's a fresh pot, or if it wasn't used in that 24 hours, then above here there is no flavor, that would become chanan anyway. Right? And if it's a new pot, then you only need 60 times the drop, even if it fell above the line. Because come on to as we'll learn in Simit Tzadik Ches. On this regard, I want to say that you have to be very careful with this. Because sometimes at the beginning of your cooking, it was more full. Then you slowly started emptying it out, and then the milk drops. You have to be careful. So even if it's a new pot, it was never used before, but a half an hour ago, I had soup higher than that line, right? Because right now I drank more water, my line's down here, right? So you have to be careful about using this. Okay. Okay. Sif Vav. Yes? Sif Vav?
Yep.
Nagu Olam. It's become the common custom. Lesser to prohibit, if the drop of milk fell on the wall of the pot above the line of where the stew is, to prohibit it, period. Even if you wait till it cools down, because of that one opinion which says that the whole thing becomes chanan right away. Now, that's only if it fell on that area which is not directly in contact with the heat, right? We explained that they used to have like ovens, in which you have a flame on one side and a pot on the other. So this is only true if the milk falls here, flame here,
On the other opposite side.
on this side above the line. But if it fell on this side where the flame is right over here, mutter is permitted, because the flame burns it up too fast for even to absorb into the pot. And therefore, as the Marmah says, therefore everything is fine. But only specifically if it's a little bit like a drop of milk, where the fire will burn it up. But if a lot fell down there, I'm not going to say that the heat burnt it up so quickly that it doesn't allow it to absorb. In Lahater, you can't permit it. Even if it fell on this side near the fire. Only if it falls below the line and I have 60 in the stew to nullify it. But if it's above here and it's a lock, which means you could see the milk is simmering before it disappears, then it absorbed somewhat, and therefore you can't rely on this leniency.
Would it work for like a gas stovetop? You have fire surrounding the pot.
Oh, he gave an example here. The only time this will work today, if the flame, you have like a gas stove where the flame is so much that it goes up the sides of the pot, and then in that area you can apply that standard. That'd be the only way to do that today, which is a very small surface area. Yeah.
So it's just the bottom little cube, like an inch of the pot.
Yeah.
You don't cook that way normally.
If you use one of those small boiling, a wok will have that. Or if you have a small boiling pot and you have a big stove and you have a gas one, that can happen also. Yeah.
I get it. It's rare.
All right. Hagar. Now, if said Rambam, if now in any situation, even if you have 60 against the drop. So it fell up here. So the Shulchan Aruch only discussed the law of the stew. The Rama says, but the pot itself is prohibited and requires kosherizing. Even if you have 60 times against the drop, nothing which fell. Sorry? Say again? And therefore, that if the drop of milk falls here below the line, yeah, so I have 60 against it to nullify it. But says the Rama, I shouldn't let it sit there. I should, because the pot is treif, because the pot requires kosherizing, I shouldn't sit there. I should pour it out the other side quickly, right? And then I kosherize the pot. However, in Bishbuk Kader Tafshel Acher, but if after I did that, before I kosherized it, I then cooked something else in it, the law is the same as long as I have 60 against that drop that was there. But you shouldn't do that to begin with, because why? Because you're not supposed to nullify something which is prohibited. This drop, this pot requires kosherizing, and if I cooked another stew in it, even though I have 60 against drop milk, and the stew would be fine, I shouldn't do that to begin with before kosherizing it, because that would be mevatel iser lechatchila. Okay, we clear on this? Yeah, they get that, yes. Okay, clear? Zion. Yesh b'shemater. There are those that are lenient and allow. B'shas atzchak, when a person is in a tight situation. Going, for example, Erev Shabbos, it's Erev Shabbos, and he's got guests to serve. Or he has no other way to hit up another pot, even if there's no guest. I feel look at the right. Even if the milk fell above the line where it's not opposite the stew. I feel looking at the even if it's not near the fire on this side where it's going to burn it right away, so it's on that side. I day shishim, so long as you have 60 against the drop. Because again, there are those that say there is no chanan in the absorbed flavor, and therefore all you need is 60 anytime. There is that opinion. And if you can rely on that opinion, when it's in a tight situation, Erev Shabbos, and you have no way to heat up a new pot of soup for your family or your guest. Right, I mentioned this on Sunday that there are 3 different views, but there are extremes all the way. We took the middle ground. The Shulchan take the middle ground, but there are degrees where one says there's never chanan in absorption, and the other which says there's always full chanan in absorption. So we pass in the middle. We said we follow the extreme, and we rely on the other extreme when it's a tight situation. That was Hey Vav Zion. Yeah, because the custom is to not allow it. Right? What was the custom? The custom was not to allow it even when it cools down, if it's above the line. Okay, that wasn't the exact extreme view, but it's more extreme in the middle ground. Okay, continues there more. And this is indeed our practice. Even here in Ashkenaz, we are lenient in this regard. If there's a tight situation and nothing else available, so I can, even no matter where the milk fell, as long as I have 60 against it, I can use that stew or soup. Now, in Nishbach, we have to understand 2 points to understand this Arma. Point number 1 is okay. Well, let's wait a second. Now, if more milk fell, or some other prohibited item, that's hot. So I have hot milk now lying on the surface. I got my karka on the floor or on my countertop for that matter. So I have hot milk on my countertop. The midu olav, and I placed above it, on it, kadera chama, a hot pot of soup, hot pot of stew. So, im masha nishbach ena etzel eish. Now that which fell, that which is on the ground, that which is below my pot, is not on the fire. If it fell onto my stovetop, that was burning, and I put it on top, different situation. But it fell on my countertop, so it's not on the fire. but it is hot. And then I put the stew on top of that milk, hot milk. So lo yahavira kli sheni. This milk is in a kli sheni now. It's not cooked on the countertop. It was cooked in something else, and then it poured out onto the countertop. Kli sheni. Right? And what's the halacha when we have the principle of tatagavar, below overpowers. Kli sheni is not mavashal. Right? It only is mavashal surface layer. The kli sheni only cooks surface layer. Right? So therefore, the pot itself needs kosherizing. It is usher. The below ksas because it absorbed the surface layer. But the stew inside, mutter is prohibited. Another case where the pot is usher, but the stew is kosher. Yeah. The tata gavar, because the lower one overpowers. So even though the upper one, the higher one, the pot is a kli sheni, so took it right off the pot, right off the flame. The milk is kli sheni, which only cooks up a surface layer, and therefore, the stew is permitted. However, you may remember from Kufay, I didn't end. You reminded me. Let me be honest there. Kufay, the Rama wrote that a kli sheni, so long as it's still above Siyat boy, we treat it as if it's capable of both absorbing and exfoliating.
But not at the same time.
Not at the same time. But therefore, if the pot that I put on top is hot, then even the meat would become a problem. As long as if you don't have a 60 against the milk. But if it's cold, then the pot will become prohibited because the milk is hot and the milk only will prohibit the pot surface layer. But if both are hot, we are stringent that it absorbs more, and therefore I require 60 in the pot against the milk that's below the pot, if they're both hot. That was based on Kufay. Yeah? Clear? Forward, now we have important thing. Now, obviously, if that's the case, if milk poured onto my, let's say, okay, we'll give the scenario in a second, but first this scenario. Milk is poured onto my stovetop, and then I put the pot on. My fleshik pot on it, directly on the heat.
Cold is not bottom.
It's not cold, it's in some stovetop.
No stove top.
Milk poured on my hot stovetop, and then put meat, then I put the stew on top of it. Obviously, everything's prohibited unless I have 60 times the ratio of meat to milk. Yeah. Moreover, even if cold milk were to go there, right, then it would be the stew would be prohibited also, because in this case, the tata gavar doesn't really help me because I have a hot stovetop there. So if cold milk fell onto your stovetop while you're cooking meat, directly onto
It's
the
possible you're cooking.
directly onto the
you're cooking
range.
On the stove top, someone's making coffee nearby.
And milk
they
spills
drop
right
the
onto the
stove top
range.
and it just spills
Onto the
over.
range
Onto the range.
where your heat is. Unless you have 60 to the ratio, you have a problem. It's a possibility that could happen.
We're talking about the whole pot, the whole stew.
Yeah, the whole stew is, unless the whole stew has 60 to the ratio, that milk. That poured there, yeah. Okay,
On the
sorry?
fire? Like, what does this mean?
Yeah, you have a range,
Yeah.
glass range, which is hot.
Okay.
And let's say it's a bigger range,
Okay.
and your pot's a little bit smaller, so your pot's in the center of the range.
Mhm.
And then cold milk poured onto that range and goes like slips right between the range and your,
Mhm.
which it will, because there's always that airspace, and milk will fall right between.
It would,
Cold milk.
whatever, it would surround the whole pot.
It's around the whole pot. The least certainly get under somewhat. So unless you have 60 in that stew against the milk that poured under there,
Even
fire
if the
spot
pot
was
was
no good.
bigger, even if the pot was bigger than the element, you have the element. Even if the pot was bigger than the actual element
Okay.
of the pot, you're hot. You'd be burning.
In that case, you may have to talk over of the cold milk.
Really,
Right? Because why the milk?
the milk's gonna get burning hot. super
From what?
fast, from touching the hot metal.
But that's
searing
above
hot
it. That's
metal.
not. That's above and not below it.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
I understand.
I don't know about that. Let's see the next din. Maybe the next din will help us. But that's a good point.
Okay, because there's no fire coming below that's gonna touch it.
Right? No. You'll see why I'm wrong in a second.
Okay.
You'll see why I'm wrong in a second, which is basically the din they're about to read. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. You're right. Let's see. Bikiluach, a stream. Mina kadera. Right tachas. A stream of milk. A stream of milk that's hot. Shahalach al kadera tenenes, which goes to a cold pot. Which one's tata? Which one's tata?
Milk, right?
You would think that the milk is tata because it's technically below the pot.
Yeah.
But because it's being poured, even though it's technically on bottom, we're actually treating like the pot that is tata and not the milk. That's the chiddush here in the Rambam.
Like you have a pot on
You
a
have
stove
a pot down here.
Yeah.
No, it's a cold pot.
Hot pot.
Right now it's cold pot.
Oh.
And you're pouring hot milk this way. And it's going down onto the floor and going there.
Onto the floor and onto the stove top.
Right.
Like onto it's
If
not.
you have a,
it's not
in the pot.
So far,
No,
the
it's
pot
not.
I mean, that's one second. Okay, this case, no, sorry, this case, this is okay. We're still correct. Okay, this is cold, yeah. Let's read the Ramon. You'll see. Let's read them up. Okay, kiluach melekadera, a stream that's coming out of a pot, right? Tachat that's hot. Okay, so it's milk. Let's say it's hot milk. It's being poured out. Yeah, el kadera tenenes, and it's being poured onto a cold pot. So it's not on the surface. It's not going to the surface of the floor. It's going to the pot directly. Yeah. So you have the bottom, which is cold. It's the top, which is hot from a oxidation. Right. So now, sorry. Yeah. If the stream is broken, it's not direct stream touching the hot pot. Before it gets to the cold, so I'm like dropping a bit. So there's never a straight stream going from my hot pot up here to my cold pot down here. It's a little drop. There's no stream. Yeah. Then the water, the hot milk that just came out is also klisheni. Right? And halacha klisheni is what? That falls onto a cold bottom. The bottom is cold, top is hot. Klisheni. What's halacha?
doesn't cook.
Sorry?
It doesn't cook. No.
Right. Yeah. And therefore, one second. Yeah.
Because it's the heat of a cliché, though.
And therefore, yeah, nothing happens. Everything's fine because the bottom is cold and the top is a klisheni, which is hot and tatagavar. However, if the stream is unbroken, so there's a stream of hot milk from a hot pot going onto my cold pot, not into the actual mixture, but on the surface of the pot. Have a ki'iroi. Now you're pouring it directly out of a klidushin. But kadera tenenes neses im yatlas bekiluach. If the stream is so hot that my hand would recoil, then the pot here is prohibited because it only prohibits the surface layer. Right? But the stew that's inside the pot, shardi, is permitted because it only forbids the surface layer. Yeah, because the bottom is cold. Correct? Because pouring out of a condition will only prohibit to the surface layer because it's heating something that's cold below. Now the reverse to your case. This is the case you think about before. But if my pot here is hot, I have a klidation. It is a klidation, my pot of milk, my pot of meat. The koshkin certainly if it's on the stovetop. Even if that which is being poured out is cold. So it's being poured onto a hot pot. What's the takot?
Next to hot. Or my case.
The hot is what's it? We'll get to that in a second. Yeah. Right. Where's the one where it falls on the ground? Did I skip something?
I think it's right before. It's right before the thing you read.
I skipped it. No.
Yeah, it's ve'im nafshecha. Above kiluach.
Where is it?
Above kiluach. Ve'kiluach.
You I missed it.
Ve'im.
Why did I miss this? Where it falls onto the ground and then it travels from the ground. Now I'm going. Where? We did that already. That we covered already.
That's not what we're talking about?
No. Okay, let's keep going. Yeah, we had that right. Okay, let's keep going. So if cold milk being poured down directly onto a hot pot below, so then I feel like and even if the stream is cold, it's going down. I call it is prohibited to tatagav because below are powers. The cold that's like pouring cold into hot, where everything is prohibited. As we learned in Tzaddik Aleph. Okay, the case we were talking about before, which I mentioned. Yeah. Yeah, so now we learned these principles. The pot, where do we have the case of it where it fell on the ground? At the beginning, right? Yeah. Yeah, so let's go back to there for a second. So when it falls onto the ground, and then you put the hot pot on top, right? It's prohibited because tata gavar, the low one is the one below overpowers. What's the one below?
But we said what if it's cold? Like,
Yeah.
what's the question? If it's cold milk spilled all over there.
Yeah, let me see something. 1 second. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, this we covered. Yes. So based on this principle, we learned, based on this whole principle, this Shulchan Aruch we're learning now, that when you have a stream that's being poured onto the side of a pot, right? The pot's considered the one below. Right? That's what we're learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The streams from the hot.
Because the stream's coming below, even if it's going to go below. Yeah. Even if, okay, here's the point. So now, if the stream goes onto the ground and pours, but the entire time it never breaks the stream, right? Then the pot here is still considered to be the one that's below.
Okay.
Because
Falls over.
so you have the pots here, and it was here. The pot falls here, milk goes down like that and pours like this. So even if the stream didn't break, this is considered below. So if this is hot and this is cold, everything's forbidden, even though it went below.
But the more practical scenarios.
That's the example I was talking about before, where it goes into the side of the range.
No, I
The whole thing would be prohibited.
Yeah, I understand.
Because it's still considered, this is still considered the one that's below.
That's not the likely scenario. The more likely scenario is you have a thing of milk that spills over, and it's not going to be a constant stream. It's just going to be like slowly pouring out, like pouring out.
Right. But in that case, if it's on the hot range, then as soon as it gets there, the tata is hot anyway, because the milk got hot by the range below it.
No, but I'm saying a lot of pots are bigger than
The pot's bigger than the range.
Than these elements circle. A lot of pots are usually like.
So I'm going to say in that case, if the pot is extending beyond the range,
Yeah.
and the milk pours down, it's cold milk, right? I'm going to say that it's only prohibited to the surface layer.
You'll see it start to like sizzle and.
So what? But it doesn't matter. But it's not. It doesn't retain its heat enough to say that it penetrates all the way up.
Right.
We say it only goes up to the surface layer.
Okay.
I think.
So that's
right. I have no other reason to. I have no reason to believe otherwise. Is that wrong? Is there a reason to say otherwise?
I don't think so. Like I was wondering.
Unless
No.
no. that would be considered the same thing as the case we learned in the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch, where it fell here.
Oh, at the bottom.
In which case, it's a 60 against that drop. The fact they went down here is no different. That they're 60 against that
So,
against
but
the
then,
thing.
no, so then if you
So
have-
it's not like Tatagav ordinarily because it's still on the flame,
so if you have
right? So
a
it'd be
bunch-
like, it would probably be considered like it fell here.
if you look at all of it, the whole pot is going to be
Yes.
surrounded by milk.
So if that happened, then I would treat it like it fell here. And earlier we have to have 60 in the pot against that drop.
Then if you calculate how much milk is surrounding the entire pot, and that even 60,
60
times,
against that, correct. That would be the correct answer. Yes,
a lot harder.
that makes more sense. Yes,
You probably throw it out. It's a lot harder to calculate.
depends how big your pot is and big your speed is, how much milk is spilled. But yeah, that would make more sense, I think, right?
Okay.
Make sense? Okay, let's go right there. We're getting out of time. Ches. Machvas, a pan. Shel cholav of milk. Shenos bekira, that was put into, for lack of better translation, an oven. Tachas kedei shel basar, below a pot of meat. Hazeya oila, the steam of the milk goes up. The nibble b'kadeira and gets absorbed into the pot above, the meat pot above, sarta and prohibits it. Says the Rama. Imoya chalav machvas. This is true if there was milk in the pan. Uba'in and we require shishim betafshil. You need 60 in the stew of meat. Shibakater that's in the pot above. Neged achalosh machvas against all the milk that is in the pan below. And therefore, only this is all true. Shamachvas megula, if the pan below is open, and the steam is gushing upward. Look at to that pot. Shalah, it's above it. The gamari, and condition number 2. In that the pot is close enough. That the steam is so hot that it's yatzelav boy by the time it hits the stew above. But if by the time the steam hits the pot above, it's no longer yatzelav boy, everything's fine. Therefore, you can hang up meat to dry it out. Above meat pot, milk pots. We're not worried about the steam that's going up, so long as it's far away enough. And especially if the pan is covered, the pan with milk below is covered, everything's fine. Just as the halacha is, if 2 pots that are closed touching each other, or even if they're open and they're touching each other, but there's no transference of steam because there's no cover above them, they're just going out steam like that. They don't prohibit one another. If they're touched, the fact that pots have to be touching, called shekain, bezeh, much more so when it comes to steam. You should observe is that, but you should, in the first instance, you should be careful with this. The point is like this: Ein kli boilea mit kli belidoit. One vessel will not absorb from another vessel unless there is food between to be a conduit for transference. And therefore, 2 pots sitting on the stovetop, one a meat pot, one a milk pot, and they're touching each other. So long as it's clean between them, so there's no yeah, leave it here, please. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. So long as as long as they're clean, so there's no food to cause transfer between the milk and meat pot, it is no problem. As long as the steam is going up, and that's all, there's nothing else. Obviously, you shouldn't do it in the first instance, and you should be careful, put some barrier, or don't cook it at the same time, but at least as long as the halacha goes, that is fine. Now, when it comes to steam, a couple of halachas that I want to share. If the steam is coming out of something dry, like a bread, same halacha applies. The steam will cause prohibition above it, even if the sides are open and the steam is going all the way to the side. But you have to, there's a point, the steam goes up straight and then it disperses. So when it goes up straight, even if it's an open area, it will still prohibit that which is above. But if it's already, if it's already spanning that way and you catch it here, it's going to be fine already. If steam comes out of a closed pot, also fine, but be careful that's actually closed, because any little bit of steam that comes out is not considered powerful enough to transfer flavor. If you did what we talked about last week, where you opened the cholent pot, or we took on Tuesday, you opened the cholent pot below the spigot, you made sure that the rush of steam is away, and then you filled it up, right? So there's no hot straight steam that we're talking about here that would make the spigot fleshik. but it's still going to be wet a little bit from the, at least the not strong steam. So make sure to wipe that off. Okay. What's this situation here? Okay, what's with so the Shulchan Aruch here that Ramah discusses what's the law of the pot above? What about the milk below? So you have a pan of milk, pot of meat above. It's open, steam's rushing up. Meat above is prohibited unless you have 60 times the amount of milk. Okay, what about the milk? Is the milk kosher or not kosher? So 3 opinions. One opinion that says prohibited because it rains. The steam rains back down and prohibits your milk. Goes up, Hanan, comes down, prohibits your milk. Goes up, Hanan, comes down, prohibits your milk. Okay, one extreme. Another extreme, nah, no problem. Unless you actually see that drops are coming back down, then it's a problem. Another third opinion is that if it's open to the side of the milk where it can go out, it's not so strong that it's trapped, it's not going to come back down. Okay, now there's no clear conclusion in the halachic authorities, and therefore we are stringent. But if it's a difficult situation and you have other reasons to be permitted, we'll be lenient. Now, obviously, it's only if the steam is so hot that even when it comes back down, it's still so hot. Otherwise, the whole thing wouldn't begin. Okay, final halacha. Ner shel chalav, a candle of fat, also k'ner shel shaiva, has been made like a candle of wax, meaning it's been congealed. It's not a liquid. It's not a liquid fat. It's congealed fat like you would have wax. And then a drop of that fat fell onto a vessel. You only have to peel it off. There's never like a hot liquid that would create a stream that would absorb inwards. But muhtach means I think it's liquidy, right? Yeah, it's already melted, and it's liquid. So then it's hot by the flame that's above it. Then you have a stream of hot, non-kosher fatty falling onto your pot, onto your vessel, and the vessel requires hagala, kosherizing. And that brings us to the conclusion of Tzadik Beis. If you have any outstanding questions we want to cover, and then next week, God willing, we begin our Chazzarah. We did Kuf Hey, Tzadik Aleph, and Tzadik Beis. We have 3 simanim to review, and we have 3 weeks. So hopefully we could do a sim in a week. My plan is keeping the schedule of Sunday and Wednesday. And we're just going to start from the beginning and reading and translating kind of like the Chazzarah. U'LeMaaseh.
I mean, on Tzadik Beis because it's a little bit more complicated. We want to go back to there.
The test is on Kufay stuff like Tzadik Aleph, Tzadik Beis. So what do you want to do? You want to just do Chazzarah and Tzadik Beis?
No. I mean, just like maybe on Sunday, just a recap on Tzadik Beis, just because this one was more complicated.
Okay, we can remind me. Tell me. We can recap some details.
Yeah, this one was more.
There's a lot more involved. A lot more details. Because we had Hanan, we had Zaya, and we had whether Hanan goes to Balua. It's a lot of details. Okay.
Yeah, and we can go back to Buffet.
Okay. We'll try that.
Yeah.
Any questions you want to cover tonight before we close up? Okay, shkoyach everybody. And we'll begin a Chazzarah. We're 3 weeks now of Chazzarah. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.